Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you know that we've been holding budget consultations prior to the budget. We started this about 2-3 years ago. The last time I was here, we were in the other lecture theatre. This obviously is a new lecture theatre. And we've been we receive feedback from members of the public saying, look, you come and get our views before the budget, but then when the budget is delivered, we don't actually get to know what specifically is in the budget apart from the budget address. So therefore, we decided to have these what we call budget information sessions. And we started off at USP. And then, of course, we've been holding public consultations, including yesterday we were at, I forgot where we were yesterday, at Nasinu. No, the day before that we were at Nasinu campus, and then we were at Samabula campus of the FNU. I have to say this is the most formal one that I've been to. None of the campus we went to did they have the dean or anybody else. I'm not necessarily saying it's a good thing. I'm saying that it is very different. But the whole spirit of this is to actually keep it as informal as possible. And one of the things that we've also said, that your lecturers can actually sit in the session, but when it comes to question time, we want your lecturers to leave. Because these sessions are specifically only for students. So lecturers can probably learn a bit from the presentation we'll give as far as the budget is concerned, getting some more information on that. But as soon as we open it up to the question time, we just want the students, because we're making an effort, special effort to come to university so the students can actually air their views. We've had representations made by university, for example, the Samabula campus raised issues about the caliber of lecturers and tutors you have, about the lack of qualifications. We have had other issues raised with us regarding lack of material, etc., that the FNU has raised, and I've raised it with your VC and will be formally doing so. But also, some of that has come in the press, some of that has not come in the press. So please feel free to ask any questions specifically. In particular, we are focused on the budget, and anything related to that. Of course, you can ask anything about your university. But before we do that, as highlighted, that we have the Solicitor General here, Sarvada Sharma, who is also the chairman of YLESI. YLESI is a 100% government-owned entity. And as announced in the budget, we actually are focusing, even prior to the budget, we're focusing very much on what we call digital Fiji. The whole idea is to provide a new level and a heightened level of technology, not just at university level, but throughout Fiji. Today, 50% of the entire Fijian population is below the age of 27. 70% is below the age of 40. So all of us who are over the age of 40, we're in the minority. All of you below the age of 40, you're in the majority. And in fact, of course, the 50% of the population is 27 and below. It has numerous implications, including budgetary implications in terms of our planning, etc. What do we need to do? One of the outcomes, of course, is when you have a younger population, we have more babies. Young people, of course, have the capacity to produce more babies. So what do we do? It has implications on our health system, implications on the maternity services we provide. And of course, if you have 70% of the population below the age of 40, that means very soon, in about 20-30 years' time, these people will also get old too. So what are the implications of a huge shift of population suddenly moving over the age of 40? What kind of illnesses will come along with it? How do we need to cater our medical system? So there are numerous implications from that. So before we do that, like I said, we've got Mr. Sarvada Sharma, the Solicitor General. Together with him, we've got some of the board members. Robert Khan from New Zealand is also on the board. And we've got Isaac Lal, who's also on the board. And part of the budget, we announced that will be Wi-Fi all the FNU campuses throughout Fiji. You have 24 campuses. All the campuses will get Wi-Fi. We've also set up what we call public space Wi-Fi hotspot areas. So Shirley Park, for example, in a couple of weeks' time will be what we call geo-gridded. So you have a geo-grid. So this FNU campus is geo-gridded. So only within this campus area can you get very high speeds of internet now. And you get what we call broader broadband. The bandwidth, is much broader now. So you can do all sorts of things that you currently cannot do once you get this Wi-Fi hotspots. And of course, we're going live with your Natabua campus here today. Shirley Park will become live in a few weeks' time. Once that happens, of course, We, for you at the campus level, are providing you learning opportunities for you to do research, etc., with unimpeded access to technology. If you go to Shirley Park, other young people come along. We want to provide spaces where young people in particular can come to those spaces, participate in those spaces, access technology, and hopefully meet each other and provide a safe haven for people to be able to access technology. I'm also accompanied this morning. Is the PS here? Okay, I'm also accompanied this morning from the Ministry of Economy team. The PS for Economy, Margareta Conrote, will be joining us soon. We've also got Shiri Gounder, who's head of fiscal planning in the Ministry of Economy. Kamal Gounder is here also, who is in planning. The head of budget is Soa Talimaimbao, and also head of debt is Pankaj Singh. So this is a team that's come over from Ministry of Economy. And before I do that and go into the budget itself, I asked the SG to please come and say a few words in respect of the Walesi platform and what are the things that we can do. And we've got the official launch of it today, and in respect of also some giveaways that many of the technology companies want to participate in. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, the Dean of FNU and the staff of FNU Natabua, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, most importantly, the students of FNU Natabua. We are indeed very delighted to be here today for the launch of the digital Fiji platform-based free internet Wi-Fi at FNU Natabua. 2 days ago, we launched this free Wi-Fi platform at FNU Samambula and FNU Nasinu, and we are indeed very pleased to do this here today in Natabua. And as the Minister has mentioned, free internet will be provided at every single FNU campus under the Digital Fiji program powered by FNU, powered by Walesi, of course. Walesi, as you will know, is a wholly owned government company that has been tasked to provide all Fijians with digital television at every single part of Fiji. So under the digital television, you have a set-top box through which you can watch a minimum of 8 channels for free at no cost. And the second thing that we had introduced early this year is the OTT platform. So as a result of which now, if you have a smartphone, you can watch all the free-to-air television channels on your smartphone. As part of the 2018-2019 budget, the Fijian government in fact tasked Walesi to provide free internet to members of the public at various public places throughout Fiji. And we have in fact launched one in Suva, and at every municipality throughout Fiji, we will be installing free internet through Wi-Fi for all members of the public to access at various public places throughout Fiji. We are indeed very delighted that we are able to do this for FNU students. One of the things that I wanted to especially highlight is that the internet, the Wi-Fi that we are providing is of course for the students, for your research, for your academic purposes. I know that in this day and age, social media is quite rife, and a lot of internet data is used for YouTube and Facebook, etc. We on behalf of the Fijian government and Walesi, through the Digital Fiji platform, are indeed very hopeful that you will be using this responsibly for research purposes, for your academic purposes, and we hope that you will of course benefit from the free internet that is provided by the Fijian government to each and every one of you at this center, and powered by Walesi. So without further ado, I would invite my fellow board director, Mr. Robert Khan, to give you a demo as to how to log on to this free digital Fiji Wi-Fi.
Sorry, I actually forgot to mention that together with Robert Khan is Shivnesh Prasad. Shivnesh is Director for Communication and Technical side, but he's also the CEO for the Walesi company. Okay.
Thank you, Minister. Before we start, can I invite you to take your phones out, whether you've got an Android or iPhone, because this is the moment where you will start getting free Wi-Fi. Now, we have created a simple guide for both types of phones, and I'll quickly run through it. We'll start off with the iPhone. I'll give you a couple of seconds to get your phones. So we'll start off with the iPhone. If you go to your main page, you click on your settings. Settings, but when you go to your settings buttons, it takes you straight into the Wi-Fi, where the Wi-Fi button is, which you have to then you select and switch on. So once your Wi-Fi is on, you then get a whole bunch of networks that'll come up on your screen. You choose the Digital Fiji button, click on the Digital Fiji network. Once you've clicked that through, you'll get this page. Now this page is very important because it requires your username and your PC login. Now your username is the email which you would have received from FNU. So there's no other emails, it's your FNU email. You have to put that in as your username. Now I do understand some of you may not have this. You can go back to your help desk here locally and they'll be able to provide you with that email in case you've lost it or forgotten. Once you've put that username in, you're required to put the password, which is your PC login password, which all of you have. Once you've put that in, you go to the next, continue on to the next page, which shows you the security certificate, which has all the policies around which how this network has been structured. All you need to do is press the trust button. Once you've pressed that, it simply takes you to this Digital Fiji page. You open that, and that opens in your browser. You read about what Digital Fiji does, what this initiative is. You go down to the last button, which says continue. You press that, and your connection process is completed. It's a very simple process. This is for iPhones, and if you've got any queries and you require any assistance, you go to your ICT help desk and they'll assist you in whichever manner. We will be circulating this to the guides will be circulated to the staff and students regarding the setup. Now going to the Android phones, which we have, which some of you have here as well. Guide's a little bit different. Go to your main screen, again, find settings, click on your settings, takes you to connections. Right on the top you'll see the Wi-Fi, where it says Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and other devices. You go select the connection button, select connections, it goes to Wi-Fi. Turn on your Wi-Fi. Once you've turned on your Wi-Fi, you go to that top button, turn that on, it'll take you to all the networks available. Again, when you look at all the networks available, the one you want to press is Digital Fiji. Press on Digital Fiji, that takes you to this page. Now this page may look complicated, but it's a very simple page. Most of these, all of the information on top would come in as listed. But the main thing is the identity button and the password. Again, you require your FNU email address as your username or your identity. Enter that in. Put your password, which is your PC login. If any of the other tabs say anything else, which it shouldn't, you can use any of these, for instance, FNU Wi-Fi, you put the EAP method. Where it says EAP method, you come down to the PEAP that has to be required, that is required to be in there, and the certificate needs to say unspecified. So those are the two most important things. But like I said, in most cases, this will be already on your phone. Go and press the connect button. Once you've put all those details in, it takes you straight into the digital Fiji page. Again, it tells you about our initiative. Go straight to the continue button thereafter, press that, and your connection process is complete. Again, any assistance required, go to your ICT help desk, and they'll be happy to assist you in whichever manner to make it work for you. Before we finish off, I just want to say you can use this on all your mobile devices as well, so including your laptop, your iPads, or any other mobile devices you use here. For Wailesi, this is a very big initiative, and for us to see so many students here, we've actually come up with a few giveaways, promotions for students only. So for students, we've got a whole bunch of promotions. We've got a television to give away today. We've got 2 phones to give away, a whole bunch of Wailesi boxes. You've put your name in a box as you've entered. If you haven't done that, you've still got the opportunity to do it. Put your name in the box, and the Honourable Minister, will do a draw at the end. And I wish all the students the best of luck in winning the prizes. Just a condition that as part of the promotion, you have to be here to win your prize, and you have to be a student. Thank you very much.
At the Samambula campus, we had people putting in their names 2 or 3 times. Please don't do that either. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the budget information session now. Normally, we've seen that on average we've been spending about 2.5 to 3 hours in each of these sessions. Unfortunately, I have to, outside on sort of foreseen circumstances, I have to rush back to Suva and catch the 1:30 flight. So let's try and finish by 1 o'clock if we can, please. That'll be really good. I'd like to give more time for questions and answers. Please note anything that you want to ask a question on at the end of the session. So, what we'll highlight to you is the major expenditure initiatives, the major revenue initiatives, and also the economic update, things like debt. A lot of people talk about debt in Fiji without understanding debt. Now, so this thing is not working. Okay, sorry. So again, we very much focus on the families in Fiji. And we're building upon the previous budgets. The main focus, you'll see there's continuation of focus on infrastructure spending, water, electricity, social protection, education, health, etc. And also, it's building upon the strong macroeconomic fundamentals we already got in place. For example, we've been growing now continuously for the past 9 years, and it has a number of implications you'll see, in particular for those of you who are going to leave university, for example, pertaining to the job market, etc. Many of the announcements that we made in this budget, we actually gave the clues for that a few years ago, but many people did not sort of catch on to it. And of course, the number of initiatives we've announced in this budget, we are actually forecasting what we'll do in 3-4 years' time. Now, what is some of the major budget initiatives? Shiri, where I'm pointing this towards? Over there? It's not catching. Okay, we've started off, as you know, with the $1,000 now. So if a mother gives birth, if they earn less than $30,000 a year, there'll be $1,000 put into a bank account. They'll be under the name of the baby, and the mother is the only one who can operate the account. Now, why have we done this? Obviously, it's to provide assistance to low-income families, low-income mothers, and they get $1,000 assistance. How does the system work? You get $500 upon the opening of the account for immediate needs. So, for example, things like buying diapers and what have you for the baby's needs. The other $500 is in the account or kept in the account until the child goes to year 1. That's when you can touch the second $500. In the meantime, we've made an arrangement with the banks. The account, won't attract any fees, but the account will attract interest rate. So in other words, the $500 will actually increase in value for the next 6 years. Now, what we're trying to do through this is trying to inculcate or engender a culture of savings. In Fiji, we're not very good at savings. So if you open an account in the name of the baby, we are hoping that after you use the first $500, you don't have to use the first $500 at all, or you can use part of it, that when the child, for example, turns 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, when somebody gives money for their birthday, you'll put the money into the account. So you create a culture of savings. Now, there are certain conditions, apart from the fact that you have to earn less than $30,000 a year, 30,000 or less, you must register the baby. If you don't register the baby, you cannot open the account. I'll tell you why. 4 or 5 years ago, we did a sweep around Fiji. We found something like 25,000 Fijians who did not have birth certificates. People as old as 45 years old, 55 years old, they did not even have a birth certificate. Today, if you go at the beginning of the school year, you'll see the BDM office, huge rush. The Solicitor General has to open the BDM office late into the night on a Saturday because parents don't register the children at birth. They only register them when they're about to go to school, year 1. Then they rush around looking for birth certificate. So it costs also government money. In this way, we are getting people to willingly register their babies. So it's creating a more efficient system. It also gives us good access to data. When you have access to data, you can plan better. So you know how many babies are in this area, what kind of health facilities they need, etc. So these are conditions of that. Now, we have of course increased maternity leave now from 84 working days to 98 working days. So in other words, women who fall pregnant, of course it's only applicable to women, men cannot get pregnant. So they get now 98 working days for maternity leave. As the law has been since the Employment Relations Act was put in place back in the, I think 2000 sometime, you get this for the first 3 pregnancies. After that, then it's halved. Now, we've also now introduced 5 days of paternity leave. This is applicable to fathers whose partners or wives give birth to a child. So they're entitled to take 5 days leave. Of course, they don't have to take the full 5 days, but I'm sure most of them will. So either take the 5 days during the maternity leave, either before birth or post-birth, etc. The whole idea is we want fathers to be part and parcel of the child rearing process. Many fathers in Fiji have never changed diapers. Hopefully they'll change diapers. So this whole idea is to focus on the family, to provide support to your partner. We've also introduced 5 days family care leave. This is a new leave in respect of where, for example, you go to work, then you get the news that somebody in your family or parents or somebody or your child or your wife or your husband has fallen ill and needs to go to the hospital or has had an accident. So you may need a few days off. This is what this leave is for. It's not when you get sick. When you get sick, you take sick leave. This is for family care leave. Now, it is interesting, some of the employers have said to us, they said, what you're trying to do is give people more holidays. And we're going to create inefficiency. They said, yes, some people can abuse it, but what we've said, we're putting a lot of trust into employees. If we're giving you now paternity leave, if we're giving you now family care leave, and you've got also now increased maternity leave, hopefully when you actually work, you'll work 110%. Because you know you're being looked after. You know that you have all these facilities for you. You've got annual leave also apart from that. You're trying to create a culture where employees are looked after, but also at the same time we're trying to create a culture of productivity. But we also recognize that for some employers, to give them some relief, because they now will be paying full leave for paternity leave and family care leave, if an employer gives you, or you take leave for these ones, you actually get 150% tax deduction for the employer to give assistance to the employer to make things easier for them. Sorry. Okay, now education. For the first time, we've actually given about over $1 billion worth of funding in the education sector. You can see over here, this is when 2014, when toppers and TELs and free education was introduced for primary school and secondary school. This is why the amount jumped from 351 million to 520 million. Of course, it's continued to rise because more and more people get into universities every year. More and more people are getting into high schools and primary schools every year, so we need to set aside more money for that, to pay for that. There are more people in university today than ever before in Fiji. In fact, there are more women in high schools and universities now than ever before. And we've recently seen the statistics on that. Over here, of course, we had the Cyclone Winston impact. And over here, we've, of course, introduced some new funding, and I'll show you how that $1.035 billion is broken down. And this is how it's broken down. Out of the 1.035 million, you have $535.4 million goes to the Ministry of Education. What does the Ministry of Education use that money for? We pay the salaries of all the teachers in Fiji. There's over 10,000 teachers in Fiji. All your salaries are paid for by government, even though you may be teaching at schools that are run by different faith-based organizations, community schools, etc. We pay all the salaries. We also then pay free milk, textbooks, subsidized bus fares. All of that comes through that $535.4 million. We also give grants to higher education institutions. We give them two types of grants. One is what you call operating grant. The other one is capital grant. Operating grant is, if we give your university operating grant, all the salaries of all your lecturers, the people who work here, your electricity, your water, the whole running of the university on a day-to-day basis, that's what you call an operating grant. Capital grant is when we give you money to build things, build a new lecture theatre, build a new lab. That's what a capital grant is. USP gets $33 million from us. University of Fiji, 4.2. Your university gets $65.1 million this year. That's how much you're getting. You used to only a few years ago get about $43, $46 million. But we made a strategic decision because this university is our national university. And this university, to be frank, needs to play a lot of catch-up, in particular with USP, in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the quality of lecturers, etc. So, for example, a couple of years ago, we gave more operating grants so your university could pay more salaries to your lecturers and tutors to attract better quality people and also for them to stay here. Otherwise, of course, if they don't get paid well, they'll go to other universities or may go to the private sector. We've again increased your operating grant to $65.1 million. These are the other higher education institutions, Vivekananda College, Montfort Boys Town, Sangam, Corpus Christi, Fulton. That's the amount of monies they get, 200,000, 100,000, 700,000, etc. We also have, what I said, the capital grants. You are the only university that's get a capital grant. Your capital grant is $19 million. You get $6 million for your building your Lambasa campus. Nasino campus gets $4 million. FNU, Vet Labs, Hospital, Livestock Shed, that's in Coronivia, gets $4 million. Maritime Academy gets $5 million. $90 million is here for the rebuilding of the schools, paying off the massive amount of damages that took place from Winston, but also now Josie, Gita, and Kenny. We have to pay for that. Like Natabua, a lot of schools were completely demolished. We have to build that. Even though these schools are not necessarily owned by government, but we have to build it because we need the education system to continue. Now, we also give, this year, $43.8 million for toppers. Those of you who are toppers, your funding is coming through here. Of course, for toppers, as you know, those who are toppers, they don't have to pay us back. And they get all sorts of things, accommodation, books, etc., living allowance. TELS is $205.6 million. That's only for this year alone. Already, the accumulated expenditure on TELS is over $700 million so far. This amount of money it costs. They should run TELS. And of course, TELS, some people only take TELS just for the university fees to be paid. Some people take TELS or eligible for TELS to get allowances paid and bus fares, etc. Civil service scholarships, if we increase that, it will be applicable to you. I understand this campus is very much heavily focused on teaching. So those of you who will become teachers will become civil servants. So there's also some opportunities for you later on once you start working in the civil service. Other scholarships and training. Now, the national toppers, we've increased the numbers. Of course, this is no longer applicable to you because you're already in university now. But it's for those people who are about to come to university. We've increased the number of toppers from 630 to 950. We've increased the numbers. In those areas, our toppers still has a huge focus on science. The shortage of people. Actually, in the education system, we've identified huge shortage of teachers for maths and sciences, in particular physics. And those subject areas, huge shortage. So hopefully some of you will actually focus on that and specialize in those areas. There's also a huge shortage of good English teachers. We've also said there are another 20 scholarships for, again, it's not applicable for you, but maybe applicable for friends, family, or siblings, etc., that if people want to study in a particular area, a particular discipline where you do not have undergraduate studies in Fiji. For example, if your brother or sister leaves high school and wants to become an architect, and they cannot do architecture at FNU, USP, or University of Fiji because there's no undergraduate courses available by any of these universities. And if you get a place in university, we can actually pay for you to go there. But there's only 20 positions. And these are the areas where you can actually get funding for, if I can get my pointer going, over there. Town planning, architecture, biomedical engineering, molecular biology, clinical psychology, speech therapists, all of these areas. So 970 Toppers Awards. We've also started a new one for teachers. So those teachers who, for example, are in the system and have only a diploma qualification. We're now giving you the opportunity to we're giving 30 awards for teachers holding a diploma qualification to upgrade to bachelor's. You have to be a teacher first to get that upgrade. So, and upgrade in these areas: maths, physics, language and literature, English, information technology, industrial arts, special education, early childhood education. Upgrade from diploma to bachelor's. Then we also have 20 awards for teachers holding a bachelor's degree to upgrade to postgraduate studies. So, masters, PhDs, etc., in the area of maths, physics, and English. Then also we have 10 overseas awards for postgraduate studies too, in respect of that. It's not just in Fiji, but it can also go overseas. We have 50 new scholarships in the area of going overseas also, for 10 awards of masters, 20 of which are reserved for civil servants, in the area of teacher training, tourism, agriculture, fisheries and forestry. 10 awards for PhDs, 5 for civil servants, 5 for non-civil servants. In other words, you can be working in the private sector where you can still get a PhD award through this scheme. But you can see the focus is in these areas. Of course, over a number of years, if we get more people in these areas, our priorities will then change. We may choose other disciplines. The reality is that we need to take advantage of these awards, because if we do not have the right people in the economy at the right time, then your economy will become sluggish. If you don't, for example, have enough people in fisheries and forestry, you cannot protect your resources, then that resource will go. If you don't have any sustainability methodologies built in within the systems, that ecosystem will go, that sector will go. So we need to build upon that. We have now, as you know, we started up a scholarship for people with students with disabilities. So a lot of them are being funded through that. What we've done now is brought up the allowances in alignment with what you currently get is under scholarship scheme. Changes to TELS. Now before, prior to this announcement, you were eligible for TELS allowances if your family earned less than $25,000. Then you could get TELS allowance. We've now increased the threshold to $50,000. So those of you who missed out on getting TELS because of the income threshold, but your families earn more than 25 but less than 50, you can now get TELS allowance because we increased that to 50,000. We've also increased bus fare allowance to $30 a week. We had a number of submissions that were made to us. Some of you may be traveling from Ba or Nandi or even Sayed-Khaiyum, so this is to cater for that increased bus fare expenses that you do have. We've also set up a new system where there are now 30 places for graduates to get entry into MBBS. There are a lot of people who, for example, done an undergraduate degree in science or say pharmacy, and they may be working now. We're now saying, okay, if you want to go and become a doctor, there's 30 places kept for you, because we obviously need more doctors. There's a shortage of doctors, to encourage them, because a lot of them will get cross credits because of the subjects that they have done. Now, TELS Accelerated Repayment Initiative. Those of you who are TELS stands for Tertiary Education Loan Scheme. It's a loan you have to pay back. Now, we've been toying around with this idea. Now, we've come up with a new scheme called what we call the Accelerated Repayment Initiative. If you, for example, are on TELS and you're picking up the full allowance, you're doing 3 years of, say, Bachelor of Education, your debt probably be sitting somewhere around about $34,000 to $36,000 at the end of it. Yep, at the end of it, somewhere there. What we are saying to you is that if you pay that 50% of that in 3 years or less, we'll forgive the balance, the 50%. If you pay 75% in 3 to 6 years, we'll forgive the 25%. We'll write it off. Not forgive, but we'll write it off. And if you pay 90% in 6 to 8 years, we write off 10%. The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, like I mentioned to you in the introduction, most of you are young. Most of you will soon have babies. Not very soon, hopefully, but you'll soon have babies. And because 50% of the population is below the age of 27, there's a lot of young people to come after you. And all of them need to get free education in primary school, in early childhood, in high school. They need to get TELs. They need to get toppers. Hopefully we can increase the number of toppers as the economy does well. So it needs to be handled on a sustainable basis. I know many people are coming along and saying, don't worry, we'll write off your debt, we'll make university free. It's unsustainable. They're only saying that to you because you can vote. It's a fact. They're not talking about higher education or secondary school education. They're not talking about primary school education. The reason why they're not talking about that because those secondary students and primary school students don't vote. We are more concerned also about secondary schools. There are schools in Fiji that don't even have a computer. There are schools in Fiji that don't even have a science lab. Some schools in Fiji, there's a hole in the floor. The infrastructure is not good. This is why in the budget we've announced we're doing a stock take of all the schools in Fiji to see what status they're in. Do they have a science lab, computer lab? Do they have roof leaking, etc.? We can then take a proper methodological approach to fixing up all the schools. That really should be our focus, because if your secondary school and primary school is strong, you'll do really well in universities. I mean, this is a few years ago, I had a friend of mine, his son went to do IT in India. And I think he went to the other university, not your university. The FNU was not around then. And when he went there, he went to do his master's. He was lost. And the stuff that he knew, they said that's what they were teaching in high school. So the curriculum was way ahead. In the same way we are looking, as we announced a few months back, we're looking at, for example, changing the way we deal with maths. At the moment, you get only one math subject. There's no differentiation. Not everybody wants to study algorithms and algebra or whatever. You may have to do what we call life maths, and then you have what you call pure maths. So we want to bring about those changes too within the system, because if you have kids doing, or students I should say, doing pure maths, they can get very disheartened because maths is a compulsory subject. They may be doing well in other areas. So we need to be able to provide the points of differences. That's the area of focus that we have got in. So you have to pay this loan because you have to think about the people coming after you. But we made it easier. Once you get a job, you'll be able to get loans, and I'll talk to you about owning homes too, because we want you to own homes too very quickly. So that's the accelerated payment system. Now, we've created a new Ministry of Housing and what we call community development. The rate of home ownership in Fiji is very, very low. Many people buy their first homes when they're in their 30s or 40s. We want people to start buying homes in their 20s. When you get a job, one of your first priorities should be trying to buy a house. But we have to change our idea about what is a house. We think of a house as a block of land and a building in that block of land. But in order to start getting your home ownership up and running quickly, but at affordable costs, we have what we call strata titling. Strata titling is when you have a building, one floor you may have 4 or 5 flats, 4 or 5 apartments, 4 or 5 houses as we call it. And you own that, that's yours. But the cost of building that is actually far more cheaper than having to develop one block of land with one house on it. Because if you build, for example, a block of apartments or homes under one roof, it's cheaper. So you can go off and, for example, buy a 2-bedroom flat, a 1-bedroom flat. Assuming you come out of university, You're earning $24,000, $25,000 first up. And then if you have a home that's available for $70,000, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom flat, we like you to buy that. That's your asset, it's yours. Then as you get better, as you do improve your salaries, you may get married, you and your partner have combined income, you can buy a bigger flat. Or you may actually sell that flat and buy a house with the land on it, or land with a house on it. So that's what we are looking at. And what we are saying now is that if you buy your first home, you don't own a home at the moment, you go to a bank, you apply for a loan. If you qualify with the bank, we'll contribute $15,000 towards the purchase or towards the building of your home. If you're buying a home, we'll contribute $10,000 towards the purchase of your home. And you must be earning less than $50,000. If you are earning more than $50,000 but less than $100,000, we'll give $10,000 and $5,000 respectively. But this is a grant. You don't have to pay us back. It's yours. It's our contribution towards you owning homes. You see, at the moment, a lot of people go to money lenders when they don't have security. We don't want you to go to money lenders. I have seen footage. You know, whenever you get monies paid into your account, say payday, it normally hits your account at around about 3 a.m. in the morning. That's when the banks actually transfer the money. And I've seen footage, CCTV footage, where around about 4:30 a.m. or 4 a.m., some dude comes out of a car with this many ATM cards and the PIN numbers. These are the money lenders, normally with the hood on. I've seen the footage. So if I, for example, don't have an asset and I need $5,000, I go to the bank. So somebody's died in the family, or my brother or sister is getting married, or I want to go overseas for a holiday to see a sick uncle or something. The bank will say, okay, what can you give as collateral? If you don't own your own home, if you don't have an asset, then generally the banks may not give you a loan. So you go running off to the money lender. The money lender takes 20, 30% interest rate. So you fall into that trap and you're forever paying that debt. But if you, for example, had your 1 bedroom flat that you owned, if you went to the bank, that's your asset. That's your collateral. The bank will very readily give you that amount of money. So you get out of that cycle. This is why we're doing this. Buying a home also helps you to save. Now, we're also helping people to buy their first land. This is primarily for buying leases, Itauke lease or crown or state lease. So a lot of people, for example, say, well, TLTB is willing to give me a lease. I have to pay the purchase price of the lease is about $15,000, $20,000, whatever it is. We will then pay towards that. But we won't give you the money. We'll pay directly to TLTB. Or we give it to the Department of Lands, so you get the lease. Because the moment you get, if you get proper lease, the banks use that as collateral. This is why I see so many people when you drive between Nandi and Lautoka, driving out of Nandi going towards Singatoga, a lot of people have these tin checks. Why? Because they live on Vaka Vanua arrangements. It's a monthly, they pay $30. They don't have security of tenure. They can be basically removed at any time. But the moment they get a proper lease, the landowner gets proper amount of money, then you can use that as collateral, build a nice concrete home. A lot of the people, whenever we have cyclones, whose homes firstly get damaged, are those people who have weak constructions. So for us, it helps us also in respect of making sure people have proper homes. In the last budget, we announced that those people who take out a home loan and earn less than $50,000, the Reserve Bank of Fiji has agreed to lend to those banks at 1% interest rate. Then the banks lend to these people at no more than 5%. So maybe 4.2, 4.3%. What we've said now is that those people will also further subsidize their interest rate. So if you're paying 4.5% interest rate, you'll now pay 3.5% interest rate. That's locked in for the 3 years. So that's very important, and it'll entice people to buy a land and make it more attractive for them to take out loans. Again, $750,000 for those people, for example, who are living on land, but the land is not surveyed, so they cannot get a proper lease. We'll pay for the survey of the land. We've got $750,000 set aside for that. Sorry, before I get into this, At the moment, assuming that one of you, you wake up in the morning and you're not feeling well, like I'm not feeling well at the moment. You don't feel well and you want to go and see a doctor. Now, because you're a student maybe, or because you're a low-income earner, you cannot go and see a private doctor. You'll go to the hospital or you go to the nursing station. In a lot of the countries now, if you have what we call a basic medical condition, you go to your local private doctor or GP, general practitioner. And the government will pay for that. We are introducing that in Fiji from the 1st of Jan of next year. So if you, for example, wake up in the morning, you're not feeling well, you're feeling a bit fluey, you go to your local doctor here, whoever, there may be a GP over here. You'll go and see the doctor, you don't pay them the fees, we'll pay the doctor. In that way, for us, it gives you quicker medical access. It also means you don't have to wait in the long queues. A lot of the people, if you go to, for example, Lautoka Hospital, a lot of people are there for various, what we call minor ailments. But because they cannot afford to go to a GP, they all go and queue up there. You should be going to a public hospital for what we call serious conditions, serious ailments. If you have a heart attack, you've got chest pains, your finger has been cut off in a very, not cut off, but cut in a serious manner. Some people get their fingers cut off, could be accident. Or road car accidents that we've recently seen, which is quite horrific accidents. That's what you go to the hospital for. For basic ailment, you should not go to the hospital. We want you to go to the GPs. We also help develop a culture of what we call family doctor. If you go overseas, if you live in a suburb, you normally go and see the GP in your area. So you'll go there, your spouse will go there, your kids will go there, and you develop that relationship. They begin to know your family history, which is a good thing to do. So, of course, this is a great idea, but how are you going to pay for it? These things cost money because the doctors will charge fees. At the moment also, you can go to various parts of Fiji where there are no private doctors at all. If you go to Korovo town, you go to Nambuwalu, you go to Senganga, you go to Nasarawanga, there may be certain areas between Ba and Lautoka that is heavily populated, there's no GPs. Why? Because most people don't go to GPs. But the moment you start doing that, it'll entice these private doctors to go and service those areas, which is what we want. So you get medical services more closer to your homes. Like I said, we have to pay for it. How are we going to pay for it? At the moment, every single employer in Fiji that employs people has to pay by law, it's been happening for the past 20, 30 years, has to pay 1% of their total salary bill towards FNTC. What we call the FNTC levy, where FNU offers various courses for that. Now, so what we're going to do is from next year, 50% of all the FNTC levy will go towards paying for the GPs. At the moment, we collect $21 million approximately every year from employers through the FNTC levy. So approximately $11 million will go towards paying for your visits to the GP. The other 40% of the $21 million will be used to pay for workers' compensation. The law as it is now, for example, if one of your staff over here gets injured and they fall down the staircase and break their neck and become quadriplegic, then the university has to have workers' compensation insurance. They'll pay through that system. You go to Ministry of Labor. Sometimes we have issues of what we call contributory negligence. So, for example, like this lady who's recording me, when she's recording me, maybe when she's recording me, she may not look where she's going and she trips and falls down. Right? Because she's so obsessed with recording me, she's doing the frontal recording, the other recording, etc. Now, when you're actually doing the recording like this one here too, when you're not doing the recording, but when you fall over, the way the law stood is that somebody might say, oh, he slipped over because he was actually drunk or he was a bit tipsy. So it's what you call contributory negligence. What we are doing now is we're setting in place what we call our no-fault system. So from the 1st of Jan, as we have with third-party insurance, from the 1st of Jan, if the employee gets injured at work, nobody will say, oh, he was drunk, etc. He gets injured at work, he gets the payout. In the same way we do with third-party insurance. Third-party insurance before, as you know, took years. If your son, for example, ran out in front of the bus and got hit by a car and died, or became a quadriplegic, you probably won't get a payment because they said it was his fault. It was not the driver's fault. Many people have languished because of that. So we set up the ACCF, the Accident Compensation Commission of Fiji. And from the 1st of Jan of this year, if you got injured on the road, then you get the payout. Nobody asks whose fault it was. For example, if you, under the previous law, if you were walking from here to the main road, and somebody came and hit you whilst you're walking on the road, and the driver was drunk, you probably won't get paid out. The insurance company won't pay it out. So now, of course, you'll get the payout. Similarly, from the 1st of Jan of next year, we'll pay that through ACCF. And the funding for that will come from this 40% of the FNTC levy. We've also now started what we call bundle insurance for social welfare recipients. It's only costing us about $50 to $60 a year, $50 a year actually, for this package. We've started this with sugarcane farmers, copra farmers, rice farmers, dairy farmers, where for $50 a year, for example, if I'm on social welfare, we'll now have insurance cover. Now, assuming I'm on social welfare and my house catches on fire, so what will I do? I don't have any money to build the house. What will I do? I'll go running to government. Please help me rebuild my house. We now don't have to set aside money. We've actually got an insurance cover for them. They'll get $3,000 for house fire. If I die, my spouse or my family will get $3,000 upon my death. My life is insured. And I'll get $1,000. They'll get $1,000 for funeral expenses. We also have $1,000 for personal injury. It's a very basic cover, but it is a smart way of dealing things because government does not have to fork out money all the time. We simply pay the premium. So we've set aside about $5 million to pay for this insurance package. And we've included that now for civil servants also, which will include some of you who will become civil servants. You'll get this basic insurance cover at no cost to you. But it's some form of protection for you and your family. We are also currently working with the World Bank and various other agencies to develop some home insurance products and also for crop insurance. Home insurance products for cyclones. At the moment, as you know, a lot of homes, only 10% of homes in Fiji or properties in Fiji are actually insured. Most properties aren't. This is why when we had home care and health for homes, everybody's queuing up. Some, of course, are doing it because they're crooking from the system, we know that. Some people are genuine, some people weren't genuine. Now, government cannot keep on doing this year in, year out. The last one cost us $110 million. Winston cost us $125 million. I'm talking about only giving out funding for people to rebuild their homes. Every year, if it happens, you're looking at, $125 million a year, approximately. It's not a good space to be in. So what we're trying to do is get insurance, and we get what we call parametric insurance, and you can ask me about how it works. The way parametric works is, for example, if all of this is the entire Fiji, and the cyclone goes through this path, those of you covered under the insurance, we don't go in look at each house. You simply get one lump sum payout. It'll be a basic cover, but you get that payout. As highlighted by the Solicitor General, we're doing all of this. The grant to YLSC, free Wi-Fi hotspots, and also, of course, digital applications. A lot of the apps we're developing on the phones, you can now go on this app and you can, of course, complain about a government department. Once you lodge the complaint, you can see the tracking. Where is it at? All of that is built into it. You can now go and see which government ministry, right from the minister's phone number all the way to the director's phone number is there, the director of that particular ministry. You can now, of course, watch free-to-air television on your phone. If you traveling from here and you want to watch the news and you might say, oh, I was here at the budget information session, the TV people are here, let's see if I want TV or not. And you're going on the bus from Lautoka to Ba. If it's news time, you can switch it on. Of course, you pay for the data, but it's free. The television is free. All of that is available. YLSC now today has enabled, if you live right in the southern tip of Lau, you live in Dikombia, you live in Rotuma, interior of Ba, you can watch free-to-air television stations, 8 of them, free. You either need a simple aerial or you need a dish. And you get a set-top box. A set-top box is free for those people who earn less than $30,000 a year. Fill out the form, you'll get the box. And once you get it, you don't have to subscribe like Sky. You don't have to pay a monthly subscription. It's free to air television. Now, one thing that's really important that we are very keen on is this. Promoting electronic transactions. Now, you see this acronym here, POS, it's called POS. POS stands for point of sale. When you go to a supermarket and you buy groceries, assuming you don't have cash, you got money in your bank account, you can use your ATM card. You swipe your card on a POS machine, point of sale machine. When you swipe your card to pay for your groceries, assuming it's $50 or $100, you will get charged 40 cents by the bank. And the shopkeeper or the merchant gets charged 30 cents. So the bank makes 70 cents on each transaction. Right? Now, we've been having discussions with the banks. So from the 1st of Jan, you no longer will have to pay the 40 cents transaction fee. It'll be free for you. So please use your ATM cards. But the merchant at the moment will still pay 30 cents. We're trying to talk to the banks and see how we can subsidize that. Because the less amount the merchants pay, more merchants will keep POS machines. Because it'll be easier for them. Now, we've also set aside some money in the budget to subsidize POS machines. To buy one of those machines costs about 500 Australian dollars. So it's about 750 Fijian. So we're going to subsidize that. To get more shopkeepers, we go to a shopkeeper and say, please, keep a point of sale machine. Be easier for you. Why will it be easier for a merchant? It's because if the merchant has all his sales or her sales done through a point of sale machine, they don't have to go and bank the money. The money is already banked. Right? So assuming I have an ANZ account, which I do. I have an ANZ account. And I go to this shopkeeper here, and his account is with Westpac. When I swipe my card and pay for my groceries, my money automatically goes from ANZ account to Westpac. It's already gone into his account. Now what that also means, the more electronic transactions we have, more money stays within the system. It does not leave the system, right? So it simply goes from my account to his account, from his account to his account. The money stays within the system. When the money stays within the system, that means the banks are cashed up. They've got a lot of cash. Now when the banks are cashed up, it means the cost of you borrowing that money becomes cheaper. So interest rates will remain low. More money is within the banks, the cheaper it is for them to, or for you to borrow from them. So you try and keep the money within the system. But if everybody keeps on taking out the money, there's less cash in the system. When there's less cash in the system, the banks are harder for cash, and when you want to go and borrow it, they'll lend to you at a higher interest rate. So this is one of the advantages of having more electronic transactions. Of course, we'll also know how much money he makes and whether he's paying the right amount of tax or not. That's also very important for us to know. So that's a major initiative with government regarding electronic transactions. We are, investing in medical and health services. We're setting up kidney dialysis centers in Suva and Nandi. In Suva it's going to be Nandera. We're subsidizing those people who earn less than $30,000 a year. We'll pay 50% of the kidney dialysis cost. Of course, we've been informed by Dr. Krishnan, who's the only nephrologist in Fiji and indeed in the South Pacific. There's probably about 600 people who may require access to kidney dialysis. This is a highly politicized issue, but let me tell you, more people in Fiji die of heart attacks. Cardiovascular problem is a huge problem in Fiji. Kidney, your diabetic lifestyle can be very much controlled. Very much. Of course, some people can say your heart problems can be controlled too. But a lot of people have a genetic predisposition to heart conditions. So, we are setting up a PPP in Lautoka Hospital. You'll be the beneficiary of that. In Lautoka and Bar Hospital. The PS, Shiri and I were in India about a week and a half ago, meeting up with various stakeholders that are interested in setting up a PPP. What we have said is that the Lautoka Hospital will be giving it out on a concession, if you like, together with FNPF. FNPF will be the partner of the hospital provider. We've laid certain conditions. Conditions are that whoever comes in needs to provide 24/7 cardiovascular services. At the moment, God forbid, if any one of us has a heart attack and you need open heart surgery, there's not a single Fijian doctor in Fiji that can carry out open heart surgery. Nobody. 21st century is actually not a good space to be in. Right? Now, why don't we have that? Is because there has been, in the past, no investment in our doctors. We have not given them a level of exposure. Of course, you can't become an open heart surgeon overnight. Just because I've done an MBBS doesn't mean I can cut your chest open, play around with your heart and sew it back up. You need about 10, 15 years of experience. You need exposure. You need to be trained. So one of the conditions is that whoever comes in needs to provide 24/7 open heart surgery facilities. They need to provide, for example, chemotherapy. If one of your relatives has cancer, there's no chemotherapy available in Fiji in the way it should be made available. Oncology, all of that will be part of this PPP. And we hope to get a partner very soon and make that announcement. There's also a requirement to build a new wing at Lautoka Hospital altogether, which will also include operating theaters, but with the ability for people to view, so you have viewing areas so students can go and watch how surgeries are being carried out. At the moment, there's no viewing areas in any of the surgeries that we have, operating theaters. Sugar, of course, just very quickly, I don't want to labor these points. We're continuing with our subsidy. The most important thing about sugar is this. A lot of people are coming along saying, we'll give $100 a ton, we'll give $150 a ton, whatever it is. It does not matter. What really matters is your input cost. If it, for example, somebody gives you $100 a ton, but it costs you $90 to produce that ton of sugar, you're getting only a $10 margin. But I may be giving you, for example, $85 a ton, but if it's going to cost me $50 to make the sugar, that ton of sugar cane, that means I've got a $35 margin. Even though I'm only getting $85 as opposed to $100 a ton. So we continue with that. We also have said there's a sugar stabilization fund. So now the farmers are assured of $85 a ton for the next 3 years. As you know, we're now driven by world market prices. So assuming next year, if the world market price, FSC gets only $70 a ton in the world market price, the farmers will get 85. That difference between 85 and 70 will be paid by or through the stabilization fund of $15. Assuming the following year, the world market price of sugar is $95 a ton. The farmer will still get $85 a ton. That extra $10 they'll put in the stabilization fund for the following year just in case it drops. So stabilization is about stabilizing the price. So how is that being funded? It's through FSC. FSC has sold some assets and they'll be put into a pool of funds, including government will contribute towards that too in the future. Ministry of Agriculture has increased, we've increased the budget to $96.8 million, an increase I think about, Shiri, 10 million? Come on? Increase about 10 million, right, for agriculture. Now, this is very interesting. I'm quite excited about this local goat meat industry. If tomorrow, for example, to put into perspective, if Crest Chicken shuts down, and Rooster, to an extent, shuts down, we will have to import our chicken from overseas. There's only 2 basic providers for chicken in Fiji. Of course, you can go to the farm and buy one and kill one and then pour hot water, pull out the feathers and all of that, right? But most people in Fiji, when they eat chicken now, they buy frozen chicken. 40, 50 years ago, we did not have frozen chicken. Now it's become part of our staple diet. Done by only one company. How does Crest operate? Crest grows its own chicken, but more so, Crest goes to a farmer and says, here's 100 chicks. It's 2 days old, 3 days old. You grow these chicks into chickens, in 36 weeks' time, I'll come and buy it off you at this price. So many villages, many farmers use that as a supplement. Or some of them completely depend on it as a source of living. Now, we need to do a similar thing with goats. Nearly everybody in Fiji eats goats, those of you who are not vegetarians. Eat goats. It's a lean meat, healthy meat, but we don't have a structured approach to goat meat. There's one farm between Ba and Natabua, they've already got 1,000 goats. Now, all they need to do is, for example, set up an abattoir. They've also said to us, we can grow these kids, small baby goats are called kids. So we grow these kids, we'll give it to the farmers, give it to the villagers. They grow it for us, and we'll buy it from them at a particular price. So you should be able to go to your supermarket, RB, New World, Old World, whichever one you go to, and then buy your frozen goat or chilled goat. It should be made available. It will bring down the price of food, bring down the price of meat. Today we have imported goat meat being sold in butchers, imported sheep meat being sold in butchers. So this is one way of growing our meat industry. So we set aside $1 million for that. We also set aside some funding for clear up, the TB and brucellosis. Civil servants, those of you who will become civil servants, you must know now, apart from the pay rises they have received, you'll now be assessed on PMS, Performance Management Systems. You'll get individually assessed, and then you can get bonuses, etc. You can move up the grades. So that is being done for the first time, and they'll get it paid out in January, backdated to August of this year. We've increased the funding to the Provincial Councils and Itauke Affairs Board, because they're not actual civil servants, but we do provide funding, so we brought up the salaries in alignment with the civil service pay rises. So they've been given additional funding too. Sorry. So what are the major revenue policies? STT and ECAL, very quickly. Service turnover tax, environment, climate adaptation levy. You only pay this tax if you go and stay at a hotel, if you go and rent a car, if you drink at a pub, if you go and watch the movie at Village and the other one at Tapu City. That's when you pay STT and ECAL. You don't pay STT and ECAL at any other place. Or if you go and eat at an expensive restaurant, not your local restaurants over here, but if you go to Denarau, etc., you go and eat, you pay the STT and ECAL. Now, when we brought about ECAL, we brought a new law, and the new law was that any money that's collected, from these funds, cannot be used for anything other than environmental and climate adaptation measures. And by law, we have to publish this. So you can get this. I'll give you a website, you can go and watch all this. It says ECAL in action. So we collected, how much, 150 last year? We collected $150 million last year from ECAL and STT. This shows you how the money has been spent, where it has been spent, every single cent. Normally when government collects taxes, they put it in a pot of money, then they pay for it for different things. They can use it as they like according to the budget. But for this money here, we have to spend only in those areas. Now what we've said now, if there are small businesses that earn less than $1.25 million, they don't have to pay STT and ECAL. So if you go and stay at a small motel the next time, you won't have to pay STT and ECAL. But if you go and stay at Sofitel, you'll pay STT and ECAL, right? That's the income threshold is $1.25 million. If you go and drink at a very small pub in bar, maybe, that does not make more than $1.25 million, you don't pay STT and ECAL. But if you go and drink at a fancy bar that makes more than $1.25 million, then you'll pay STT and ECAL. Now, like I mentioned to you, the employers get 150% tax deduction for paternity and family care leave. Once you start working, if your employer sends you for training, they say, look, I want you to be trained in this area. Go away for a 4-week course. The cost that they incur for training you, they can claim as 150% tax deduction. So incentivizing employers to send their staff for on-job training. Research and development, if you carry out research and development, ICT and renewable energy, the company gets a 250% tax deduction. We see a huge potential in ICT, ladies and gentlemen. This is why we're investing so much. There is a company here based in Lautoka that is specializing in filing the tax returns of Australian taxpayers. At the moment, he's employed about 5 people. So these would be qualified accountants who are working for him. They file the tax returns and they submit it electronically to Australia. We see a huge potential in that space. And these are very top-paying jobs. So what we've said also, we provided an incentive a few years ago. If any company invests in the ICT sector, they get a tax holiday. We try to incentivize people. I've said this before, I want to tell you too. A few years ago, we had a company called MindPearl that came and set up call centers in Fiji, a call center. And I asked them, I said, why have you chosen Fiji? They said 3 reasons. One of them is that you're exactly in the right time zone. You're exactly 12 hours ahead of Greenwich Mean Time. 12 hours exactly ahead of Greenwich Mean Time, which is in UK. So the time zone is good. You can phone people in different parts of the world and it actually fits in well. Second thing is that your infrastructure is relatively good in terms of the ICT infrastructure. It's reliable. The third thing he said is that you Fijians have a neutral accent. These companies that go and set up in India and Philippines, they literally spend millions of dollars to get a Filipino or an Indian to change their accent so some American or British person can understand them. You know, the da-da-da. So they get them to change the accent. So whereas with us, apparently, they don't have to spend money to change our accents. People readily understand us. So what we're saying, if companies come and invest in the ICT sector in all of these areas, then they get a tax holiday also. Many parts of the towns and cities in Fiji, the buildings are run down. What we're saying to these private businesses, if you spend more than $1 million in upgrading your buildings, you can get a 25% investment allowance. Clean up the place, make it look good, put disability access, put ramps, etc. Next year, ladies and gentlemen, we've been given the privilege of hosting the Asian Development Bank annual meeting. It's a big deal. There'll be something like 4,500 people will descend upon Nandi for 1 week. So many different countries, organizations will represent. We'll be actually using some university students too. So we'll reach out to your university so you can act as chaperones to take these people around. A lot of them will be ministers and high-powered people. And so we are saying if anybody is going to contribute towards the hosting of that, if they give $10,000 or more, they'll give 150%. They get 150% tax deduction. If you buy electric buses, we'll give you 55% capital deduction. If you set up an electric charging station, we'll also give you some tax incentives because we're working at the moment to get some electric buses in Fiji. Cleaner transportation, more efficient, and of course less carbon footprint. A few years ago, if you bought any of these fruits, like pears, apples, etc., the duty used to be 32%. We reduced it down to 15, then we brought it down to 5. We've now zero-rated it because, we think that you need to get access to these kinds of fruits, more healthier. Instead of eating, things like the junk food, you can eat more fruits. The duty on tea has been reduced from 5% to 0%. We put an excise duty on, fizzy drinks, carbonated drinks a few years ago. But what we found, a lot of the businesses were bringing cheap imported carbonated drinks. So we put up the duty on that, $2 per liter. Of course, cigarettes and alcohol has gone up by 15%. Plastic bag levy, as you know, you would have experienced if you've used a plastic bag. Hopefully you haven't, but it's gone up from 10 cents to 20 cents. And at the moment, if you go to the market and buy your vegetables, you put your bella inside the plastic bag, they don't charge you a fee because that fee is not applicable at the market. It's only at supermarkets, pharmacies, and service stations, etc. But let me tell you, from 2020, it will be completely banned everywhere, single-use plastic. Plastic is causing enormous problems for us. Now, the reason why we're doing this is to change the pattern of behavior. I remember when I was a kid, which is many, many decades ago, when we used to go to the market, we did not have plastic bags. We had those reusable bags. Some people, they call it jolly. That's what we used to use, reusable bag. Many mothers' groups, women's groups actually make these bags. We want more people to use it. For a few years we've had this law that if you cannot bring in cars, second-hand cars, that are more than 5 years old. So obviously we want new technology. But what we found is that many car dealers were bringing in cars that were 4 years and 11 months old. 4 years and 10 months old. So the reason why we want newer cars is because it's newer technology. Technology is changing on a yearly basis. So if they bring in newer cars, then of course technology is good, fuel efficiency is better, less carbon footprint. So to incentivize car dealers to bring in cars that are much younger, so what we're saying now, if you bring in cars that are 2 years or younger, instead of paying 32%, you'll pay 15% duty. Same thing with taxis. Taxis are already getting concessionary rates if you bought in a car for taxis. Again, that concession rate will be halved, so they'll pay 7.5%. Very quickly, this is the value of our GDP. In 1970, it was 0.2 billion. 1 billion, 2 billion, 3.6 billion, 5.6. You can see how quickly it's jumped from 5.6 billion to $11.3 billion. This is the total value of our gross domestic product. Now, the reason why it's jumped so quickly from 5.6 billion to 11.3 because we've had 9 years of uninterrupted growth. We keep on talking about growth. This is one of the very positive outcomes of economic growth. Previously, we've had growth, no doubt about that, but it was not consistent. It was not like, it was like 1 year we grew, maybe second year we grew, the second year, third year there's negative growth. Then we grew again. There is negative growth. When you have consistent growth, even sometimes the growth rate may not be as high, but because you're growing consistently, your GDP goes up exponentially. And this is what happened. From 2010, we've been growing for the last 9 years. This is 0.4% is because we had Winston. Winston wiped off $1.3 billion worth of our GDP. You can imagine what would have happened if Winston did not happen. This would have been high, somewhere there. Our GDP would have been worth a lot more. So despite the loss of $1.3 billion our GDP is sitting at 11.3 billion Fijian dollars there. So that's how we've grown. We projected to grow for at least another 3 years. Normally we do projections for 3 years. Excuse me. I would venture to say that the way we are currently going now, and if you have consistency in policies, you'll see this trajectory go out even further. Now, what has been the result of that? 40,000 new jobs have been created in the last 5 years. You can see unemployment rate has come down to 4.5%. You see the number of job advertisements have gone up. This is the RBF survey. They look at Fiji Times and Fiji Sun. They started looking both these papers from 2014. If you look over here, this is the green bars are the FNPF new membership. So normally new membership indicates obviously new employees coming into the system. So it's 20,795 in 2017. Now if you take out the number of people who withdrawn, obviously there are people who withdraw because they're now retired. The net effect of that is 13,000 new memberships in FNPF. I was going to say NFP, but FNPF. So this is the result, ladies and gentlemen, of 9 years of growth. So you can imagine if we continue to grow on this path, what impact it will have on this line. This line will continue to come down. This line will continue to go up. This will continue to go up too. So it's very important to understand the rationale and the need to ensure consistency in policies. Now, we talk about inflation, cost of things. Normally the way inflation is measured is you take your everyday basket of what we call expenses that people incur. Now, there are 3 ways that prices of things go up. Excuse me. I'll let you read that for a while. I assume nearly everybody in this room eats bread, you eat roti, you eat panikeke, bambakau, bread, scones, whatever it is. Now, all of these things are made from flour. Where does flour come from? It comes from wheat. Where does wheat come from in Fiji? From Australia. There are only 2 companies in Fiji that make flour, Punja & Sons and FMF in Suva. Flour in Fiji is price controlled. So the moment Punja & Sons and FMF make flour, we control the price at which they sell it to the supermarkets. Then we control the price at which the supermarkets sell to you. Now, when we say it's price control, it means we allow the businesses to make only a particular margin. Obviously, they have to make some profit, otherwise they'll shut down. But we control the margin they make. And that control is put in place by the Fiji Commerce and Competition Commission. It's an independent body. It has to be independent. Otherwise, if it's done by governments, then they'll say, oh, government has a proclivity to a particular company. So wherever there is a monopolistic position or what we call a duopolistic position, is an independent commission that deals with the pricing. The point though is, we can only price control it as soon as the flour is made. We cannot price control the price at which they buy the wheat. Wheat is the raw product. If today Australia is selling, the Australian Wheat Board is selling to Punja and Sons and FMF at $1,000 a ton wheat, if tomorrow Australia decides to sell it to Punja and Sons and FMF at $2,000 a ton, we cannot do anything about it. We cannot control it. That's the reality. And when the wheat lands, obviously the purchase price for FMF and Punjas is high. So when they make the flour, then they'll come to Commerce Commission and say, hey, I want to double my price, because I just had to pay double for the price of wheat. We have no control. We can only price control the margin they make. Same thing with fuel. We don't have any fuel. The world price of fuel, or oil as they say, crude oil, a few months ago was $38 a barrel. At the moment, it's $62, $63 a barrel. In 2008, it was $140 a barrel. What determines the price of fuel? Lots of things. How much production the Middle Eastern companies have, how much production is in Russia, USA, whether there's some war going on, whether Donald Trump's made a new decision, whether there's a cold winter in Europe. You see, the fuel price changes every quarter, you review. And you will see, those of you who are interested in this area, whenever there's a cold winter in Europe, the price of fuel will go up in Fiji, world price, because the Europeans and the North Americans are getting cold. They want more fuel. They burn more to stay warm. We have absolutely no control over it. We can only control it once it lands in Fiji. Fuel is price controlled. Flour is price controlled. Cooking oil is price controlled. Rice is price controlled. All of these things are price controlled. But most of these things, or fuel, wheat, is not grown in Fiji. We have to rely on other countries. The other thing that we don't have a control over are cyclones. Absolutely none. After Cyclone Winston, the price of a small bunch of bananas in Suva that normally cost $5 was $20. Long beans was $5 a bundle, because Valley Road got flooded, Bar vegetable areas got flooded. Yangona went up to $200 a kilo. It's still $140 a kilo. Some people still drink it at the same rate. We have no control over that. So when the RBF does the assessment of inflation, they look at your everyday usage of things. There's a basket of groceries. Inflation rate was 1.6% in 2015, of which 0.6% came from alcohol, tobacco and kava. The rest of it was, fuel and other food items, flour, etc. 2016, inflation went up to 3.9. 2.7 came from these three items, predominantly kava. Of course, kava would not be considered part of your basket of groceries in a place like Australia, because people don't drink kava in Australia, large quantities. Over here, generally people drink it on a daily or second day or third day basis. It's a household expense. But you can see the contribution of kava, 2.7, the rest of the stuff was 1.2. 2017, out of 2.8% inflation, 2% came from these three items. The others only 0.8. But you see the permutation changes here. 4.6 so far, it may drop, but so far, 4.6%, only 1.7 by these three items, 2.9 here because the price of fuel has shot up. Almost doubled within a span of a few months. So it'll have an impact on inflation. Of course, this is what you call a running inflation, on a month-to-month basis. This is a 6-monthly basis. We'll see how it pans out at the end of the year. A lot of people don't know much about foreign reserves. Foreign reserves are very critical. I talked to you about buying wheat. I talked to you about the new cars. I didn't talk to you about that, but a lot of new cars on the road. We buy lots of things from overseas. When we buy lots of things from overseas, obviously you need foreign currency to buy those things. They're not going to sell it to us in Fijian dollars. Let me pick on somebody. If somebody, for example, like this young lady over here, she's wearing this nail polish. This nail polish is not made in Fiji. She's probably got gel in her hair, it's not made in Fiji. She's got a phone, it's not made in Fiji. If she's wearing a watch, it's not made in Fiji. These lights aren't made in Fiji. What I'm holding is not made in Fiji. This is not made in Fiji. So most of the things that we buy are bought from overseas. When they sell it to us in US dollars, Japanese yen, Australian dollars, euros. So you need to have enough foreign currency to trade, buy and sell. Colloquially speaking, if you don't have enough foreign reserves, people say, oh, that country is going bankrupt because they can't buy stuff. International benchmark says, this is the number of months over here, that you should have at least 4 months worth of foreign currency to be seen to be stable. In 2006, we had $515 million worth of foreign currency. Then it went up. This over here tracks the number of months of foreign trading you can do. Today we're sitting on $2.1 billion worth of foreign reserves. Now, what is really important though, you have to note, you see over here, in 2010, even though we had almost half of this amount, $1.3 billion, we had, if you track this across here, about 4.8, 4.9 months worth of trading. Over here, even though we've got $2.1 billion worth, we've got only 5 months worth of trading. Why? Because the economy is growing and people are demanding more for goods and services. There's more, in particular, goods. When people have more money in their pocket, you know, we had a $30,000 income tax threshold now. You no longer pay tax if you earn less than $30,000. What did people do? Some people went and bought a new car. Maybe painted their house. Maybe bought some new nail polish. Or whatever it is. Bought new shoes, new phones. All of these things require foreign reserves. As we speak today, every day somebody somewhere in Fiji is getting connected to electricity. Because we're spending $50 million in rural electrification. The moment somebody's house gets connected to electricity, what do? They buy a fridge. They buy a microwave. They buy a TV. Maybe they'll buy a blender. They maybe buy a washing machine. They buy maybe second TV, buy phones. None of these things are made in Fiji. None of it. But because the economy is growing, so there's a lot of pressure on it. So this is why, despite having $2.1 billion worth of foreign reserves, we've got about 5 months worth of trading. Very quickly, debt. Everybody loves to talk about debt in Fiji without knowing about it. I'll tell you about debt. There are 2 ways of measuring debt. One is as a percentage of your GDP, and the other one is, of course, nominal sum, as in the dollar value. But let me tell you one thing. When Fiji became independent, you had the Ratumara government. The Ratumara government borrowed money. All governments in Fiji borrowed money. They borrowed money. Then after the Ratumara government, then you had the 4-week-old Dr. Bavandra government. His government may have borrowed money, although they were there for only 4 weeks. But he most definitely would have had to pay the debt of the Ratumara government. Then after the Dr. Bavandra government, you had the Rambuka government. 2 coups in 87. Rambuka government ran essentially from 87 up till 1999. They borrowed money, but they have to pay the debt of the Bavandra government and the Ratumara government. Then you had the Chaudhry government. They borrowed money, but they have to pay the debt of the Rambuka government, Bavandra government, Ratumara government. Then you had the Garase government. They borrowed money. They have to pay everybody else's debt too. By this stage, probably most of the Ratumara government debt has been paid, because normally government debt's about 30 years. And then, of course, the Bainimarama government came in 2007. They borrowed money. They have to pay everybody else's debt. Then came the Fiji First government. They have to pay everybody else's debt, and they also borrowed money. That's how the system works. And thank God that none of the Fijian governments have ever defaulted on any of the loans. We paid everybody else's debt. Because the money is not lent to the Ratumara government, or the Garase government, or Rambuka government, or Dr. Bavandra government, or Bainimarama government. The money is lent to the Fijian government. So we have what we call a sovereign obligation to pay the debt. When the Bainimarama government was appointed in 2007, at the end of 2006, the debt was $2.8 billion incurred by the other governments. That was a sitting debt at that point in time. So from that time, the debt has gone up to $5.1 billion. So 5.1 less $2.8 billion. That's the amount of debt borrowed, put in simple terms, by the Bainimarama government and the Fiji First government. Okay? That's how the debt system works. This is what you call the nominal way, the dollar value of measuring debt. Now, as a percentage of GDP, assuming, I'll give you a simple example. Some of you, of course, may be economists and understand it a lot better. For those of you who are not. Assuming I have $100, and let's say for all intents and purposes, my $100 wealth is my GDP. And I go out and borrow $20. So my debt to GDP ratio is 20%, right? 20 over 100 is 20%. But assuming I get richer, and I get $500, and I decide to lash out. I say, instead of borrowing $20, I'm going to borrow 2.5 times more. So I'm going to borrow $50. So I've borrowed 2.5 times more, but my debt to GDP ratio is only 10%. Because I'm now wealthier. So the percentage of my GDP is gone down, even though the nominal sum has increased. The dollar value is increased. GDP takes into account how much your GDP is growing up by. You know, I showed you that slide about 11.3 or $6 billion. As a percentage of our GDP, our debt has gone down. You can see from there it's gone down. Now, of course, Winston took place here. If Winston had not taken place, you can probably shave off another 2%. Would have been sitting at about 45% of our GDP. Now, let's look at other countries. You can Google this. Now you've got fast Wi-Fi speed. You can Google this now. This is the debt to GDP ratio of other countries, comparable countries. Japan, 239.2% debt to GDP ratio. Singapore, 112%. USA, 107.4%. It's the most debt-ridden country in the world, in terms of dollar terms. Of course, you've got Maldives. We put these island states so we can compare ourselves. Fiji sits at 47%, as we've stated earlier on. Now, what does it mean in dollar terms? You know, dollar value. This is US dollars. Japan's total debt is $11.8 trillion, US dollars. Singapore is 332.7 billion. US, like I said, is the most debt-ridden country, is $19.9 trillion. That's the total debt in US dollars. Now, none of you are saying that Japan is not doing well, USA is not doing well, they're debt-ridden. Australia is not doing well. Look at Australia's debt, $517.3 billion US dollars. We are only $2.47 billion. These are US dollars. So we can compare ourselves. You see over here, Japan's debt is 11.8 trillion US dollars in dollar value. US is 19.9 trillion, but as a percent of GDP, Japan is quite high. Because why? Japan's economy is much smaller than USA's. So as a percentage of the GDP is quite high, 239.2. USA, of course, the economy is much bigger. So even though the debt in nominal terms or dollar value is much higher than Japan's, as a percent of GDP is 107.4%. Now, this country is very interesting, Mauritius. I went there about 18 months ago. Very similar to Fiji. They had sugar-based tourism. But they decided to do what we are doing now, but they've done it on a much grander scale. They've decided to put 4-lane roads everywhere, set up ICT parks, gave away land for free to international companies. And what they did was, they have an added advantage over us, they're very close to Africa. Those people who study economics would know that Africa is now the fastest growing economy in the world, fastest growing continent in the world. Very young population. So, but of course Africa does have some negative connotations. The moment you mention Africa, people think, oh, civil war, law and order situation is not good. But of course a lot of companies want to go there because a lot of money to be made. So what Mauritius did, they set up all these parks, they went to India, got 2 or 3 Indian hospitals to come in, and then they said to the world, come and set up your base here, your headquarters here, we'll give you this land, rent-free, whatever, and you can service Africa from here. Internet speed, fantastic airport, they invested in millions of dollars in the airport, upgraded the airline, etc. Then they went to the rich Africans. They said, look, you can come and buy a strata title here, come and holiday here. And if you need an open heart surgery, don't go to India, don't go to Europe, don't go to France, come to Mauritius. You've got the best hospitals here. And by the way, after you want to recover, you can stay 2 weeks at our hotel. Medical tourism. That's also one of the things we are trying to do. Why do we think, apart from the fact that we want ordinary Fijians to access better medical services, with this PPP setting up in Lautoka and Ba, it'll also mean a lot of tourism opportunities for us. Without naming the company, 2 years ago, a major international company wanted to send 3,000 of the top executives to come and do R&R and do have a conference, in Fiji. Everything was fine. But of course, these are very, top-end companies. Then they said, what if one of our expats or one of our executives has a heart attack? So went to Nandi Hospital, they went to Lautoka Hospital, they said, thank you very much. They went to some other country. So we missed out on that opportunity. A few years ago, I had a lot of Japanese companies saying to us, we want to come and set up retirement villages in Fiji. So when it's cold in Japan, they come and suntan here and walk around here, etc. for the elderly population. Because in Japan, nearly 3/4 of their population is extremely old. Very old population, aging population. The pyramid is there, wide on top. Ours is wider at the bottom. So there's all these opportunities we're missing out on. That's what the Mauritians did. So you see, they incurred a very high level of debt, $7.5 billion US, 62.7%, but it's good debt, it's productive debt, because they're building capacity. In the same way, when we connect people to electricity, a guy who's catching fish, or a lady who's catching fish, when they have no electricity and they go and catch fish, then they come in the morning, early hours of the morning, they sell the fish by the roadside. $50 a bundle for a bundle of fish. Now, come midday, they still can't sell the fish. They're beginning to get worried, because they can't keep the fish for too long. It's hot day. No ice. They keep on only throwing water to make it look fresh. They know that by the afternoon, if they don't sell it, it'll either rot, or they have to quickly cook it themselves or give it away. So you come along at 2 o'clock, you negotiate, you bring down the price from $50 to maybe $10 or $20. They'll sell it because they're desperate. Maybe it does not recover the cost of the fuel, their labor cost. The moment you connect them to electricity, first thing they'll do is buy a cooler. They'll make some ice. They'll sell it for $50 in the morning. 2 o'clock, you come and want to buy it for $20, they'll say, bugger off. Because they know they can keep the fish. They've got the ice. They don't sell the fish, they keep it in the cooler. They bring it out the next day, throw water on it, you drive past, say, fresh fish for sale, $50. You've increased their earning capacity. So if we are borrowing money to invest in those things, we are building the productive capacity of our people. And that is very important. So that's what you call a good debt. If we're going to build a 4-lane road or 4-lane highway between Nandi and Lautoka, as we've announced, we're starting next year, it's good debt. There's a lot of traffic jams, a lot of lost hours of productivity, a lot of accidents. It also increases the real estate price between Nandi and Lautoka too. A lot of people talk about debt without knowing where exactly we're getting the money from. There are two components of debt. One is we borrow money locally and we borrow money from offshore. So we borrow money, for example, from local investors, and then we borrow money from overseas entities. We like to keep what we call a debt mix of about 30% plus or minus 5. We like to keep our overseas borrowings to about 30% of our borrowings and 70% domestically. These are the agencies we borrow money from, or have this is our total debt exposure. ADB, $348.5 million. International Fund for Agricultural Development, we have $2.2 million exposure. World Bank, 148.6. JICA, 11.5 million. Exim Bank of China, 516 million. Global Bond, $416.2 million. This is the total debt overseas borrowings. 70% is, of course, borrowed from institutions locally, FNPF, various insurance companies, various other private investors that lend us money. Now, there's a lot of song and dance being made about China. I think Rambuka recently said that Fiji has to give up its ports and airports because of the Chinese debt. It's a lot of nonsense. Obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. When you actually have debt, when we, like I mentioned to you earlier on, when a government borrows money, we don't give mortgage over property. Of course, if I go and want to buy a house, I go to the bank will say, I want a mortgage over the house. I'll give you the money. This is the repayment. In the event you don't pay your debt, I will seize your house, sell your house, get my money back. That's what you call a mortgage. When governments borrow money, they don't give mortgage over the real estate. We don't have a mortgage with any of these entities, nor the Exim Bank of China. We last borrowed from Exim Bank of China in 2012. The Ganase government had borrowed some money to build a ICT building in Berkeley Crescent. The Beni Marama government borrowed money from Exim Bank of China for 7 projects, and I can tell you what they are. Nambawalu Draketi tar sealing of the road, Buddha Bay tar sealing of the road, Sawani Syria tar sealing of the road, which is in Naitasiri, Singatoka Valley tar sealing of the road. Those of you who come from Moto in Ba, the road you got there and that wonderful bridge that used to always get washed away and flooded, they got a high bridge now. And one was the Rewai public rental housing, and the other one was the Housing Authority subdivision in Tatiroa Heights. They are the 7 projects, for which debts of $516 million has been accumulated. So nobody's taking over Fiji, no Chinese, no Japanese, no Australian, no Kiwi, and that's our debt position. Now, this is very interesting before we come to the closure of this presentation. If you look over here, from 1980 to 2006, whatever government was there, they spent $3.5 billion in capital expenditure. In other words, building things. Maybe they may build a campus in Coronivia or build a road or nursing station. That's what you call capital expenditure. From 2007 to this financial year, under the Beni Marama and Fiji First government, we've spent $7 billion. Double the amount they spent in $27 million, we spent it in 11 years for capital expenditure. What is really interesting is that out of every dollar they spent in capital expenditure, they borrowed 76 cents. Out of every dollar expenditure we have expended, we've borrowed only 36 cents. Why? Because we have savings. This is the savings. This is what we call operating savings. Operating savings is, government of course collects money. We collect tax, we collect VAT, STT, ECAL, whatever it is. We collect all of that money. Then the first thing we pay for is what we call operating government. We've come here, we stayed at the Waterfront Hotel last night. That has to come from our operating expenditure. The salaries of your teachers, the operating expenditure given to universities, all of these things, they come from our operating, the money that we collect is revenue. If you take that out from our operating expenditure, we have a savings. Of course, this year anticipate $1 billion worth of savings. We then use this money to build things. We're going to build a university campus, build a 4-lane road, whatever it is. After we spend this money, then if we have more expenditures in capital expenditure, then we borrow money. So we are only borrowing to build. We're not borrowing to operate. You should never borrow to operate. And of course, the more savings you have, more operating surplus you have, what we call surplus, you'll actually have to borrow less to do more. You can see the savings they had over here. And we've done a lot of things. We've done a lot of sort of interesting things in as to how we've saved money. And now we spend about 40% of our budget on capital expenditure. So, very family-orientated budget, built on previous budgets. Many people do not understand this. What we have done in this year's budget, we actually gave the clues for it about 2-3 years ago. But people are just so politically minded they did not pick up on it. And in fact, we've given many clues in this year's budget as to what we'll be doing in the next 2 or 3 years. And of course, it's growing for 9 years straight. Fiscal policy remains strong. Now, you can get everything that I said on this web page. You can also get this book. This is the budget book. This has a line-by-line item expenditure. So I'll open this page. It says Ministry of Fisheries Program 2, Activity 1. They're going to spend $533,788 on wages. They're going to spend $19,200 on travel, subsistence, $19,000, telecommunications, $18,000. Every single item is there. You can look at it. So that's there. You'll also find, for example, this flyer, rural electrification projects. I highlighted to you. It has even the breakdown of who other people get connected to the grid. So, if, for example, it says here, Vunda Back Road, Lautoka, 8 applicants, total cost $274,000. Vakambuli, Lautoka, 2, $22,000. Harry Charan and Sanjay Prasad, Vuna Kawandrandra Subdivision, Koravuto, Nandi, 13 people, cost $34,000. Tonge Village Bar, 16 people, $24,000. Every single thing is there. So you know who will get connected. I've had actually people in the past years ring me up and said, hey, my village is listed there, when are you getting connected? So it brings about a lot of accountability. We of course have then for the water, says which village, which settlement is getting how many water tanks, when they'll get it. We also have the budget highlights, administration, infrastructure, social services, all of that is there. All of that is available on the website. It makes you better informed. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to now, well, it's our website there. I'd like to, of course, now open up the floor for any questions. Please feel free to ask any question. Nothing is too silly or too hard.